My husband was a general. When he was 20, he left me behind and sacrificed his life for our country. I raised our child alone, managed the household affairs, and even secured a noble title for my son. At 60, I happened upon my son, now a marquis, entering a residence with my beloved grandson. The sounds of joy and laughter from within pierced my heart like daggers. It turned out my child called another woman mother. It turned out that after 40 years of widowhood, my husband had only feigned death. Learning the truth, my hatred knew no bounds. They all must perish. The tall walls of the grand estate echoed with waves of cheerful laughter. A steady, masculine voice spoke warmly. "Mother, how are you feeling today? Did you like the red coral I sent the other day?" Such a magnificent gift from His Majesty himself. How thoughtful of you to show such filial devotion, came the pleased response. That very coral ornament had just been removed from my quarters under the pretense of finding a suitable gift for my grandson's new tutor, a gesture of respect for his studies. Little did I know it was meant to honor an elderly woman as his teacher. A sweet child's voice chimed in. "Grandmother, Edmund loves you most of all. When can Edmund live with you always? That dreadful old woman is so ugly and mean. I don't like her one bit." A kindly, elderly woman's voice replied, "There, there, my dear boy. Once that horrid old creature is gone, grandmother and grandfather will return home together. But you must promise never to let slip our little secret, you clever child. Edmund is ever so smart. I would never tell. My real grandmother is someone else entirely. The most wonderful grandmother in all the world." "What a clever little treasure you are," came a gravelly old man's voice, and the courtyard filled with warmth and merriment. I leaned against the high wall, my blood running cold as ice. That middle-aged man calling another woman mother was none other than my own son, whom I had devoted 40 years to nurturing and guiding. That innocent child's voice belonged to my precious grandson, whom I loved beyond measure. Yet here they were, just beyond this wall, in another grand residence, calling strangers mother and grandmother. I stumbled away from that quiet alley, feeling as though I had aged 10 years in an instant. Who would have imagined that this residence lay merely one street away from our marquis estate in the capital? So my husband, who had supposedly died in service to his country, was very much alive. So the child I had carried for 10 months and raised with my own hands wished to claim another as his mother. And my darling grandson, whom I had always favored, now called me an ugly and cruel old hag. At the corner outside the alley, a carriage driver waited for me. Seeing me emerge, he approached anxiously. "My lady, are you—" I waved dismissively. "My legs are growing more unsteady by the day. Standing too long leaves me quite exhausted. No matter. Please take me home." The driver helped me into the carriage and hesitantly asked, "Earlier, I truly thought I glimpsed the young marquis. Could I have been mistaken?" I replied gravely, "I merely came out for a stroll. If we did not find the marquis, what does it matter?" The driver murmured his agreement. Upon returning to the Marquis estate that very evening, I arranged for the carriage driver to be sent to our ancestral home in Greenfield with 50 taels of gold for his security and silence. Afterward, I secretly dispatched men to follow the Marquis, while sending another group to search for those loyal retainers who had witnessed the general's supposed demise all those years ago. Bluewater Province was where I focused my most intensive investigation. 3 days later, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Marquis estate. An elderly woman dressed in fine silks and radiating nobility walked slowly into the main courtyard, supported by my daughter-in-law. My gentle daughter-in-law introduced her. "Mother, this is my aunt." The elegant woman offered a slight bow. "I greet the Dowager Marchioness." I remained composed, not immediately offering her a seat. Instead, I inquired, "Margaret, you say this is your dear aunt." My daughter-in-law, Margaret, replied softly, "Yes, mother. Aunt has been residing in Blue Water Province and has come to the capital to visit Edmund and myself." Blue Water Province, I mused, then smiled. Since this lady is Margaret's dear aunt, she is naturally an honored guest of our estate. If this is your first visit to the capital, I hope you have suitable lodgings. If not, I would be pleased to extend our hospitality. The well-preserved lady graciously declined. "I would not trouble the Dowager Marchioness. I am staying at the residence on Cobblestone Lane, quite adequate for my needs." "Cobblestone Lane?" I nodded with a smile. "How convenient. So very close indeed. Please feel free to visit whenever you wish. It would be delightful company for Margaret." After some pleasant conversation, I excused myself, claiming fatigue. As I withdrew behind a screen, I could not suppress the bone-deep hatred that flickered in my eyes. These utterly conscienceless creatures dared to bring her directly into my home. They were determined to carve out my very heart. I had initially believed my daughter-in-law was as deceived as I, never imagining she had known everything from the beginning. Perhaps she and my dear son had been mocking me behind my back countless times. How foolish and blind I had been. Here I was, with half my body already in the grave, only now discovering the depths of their deception. My husband had staged his death. My son had been replaced. My grandson's heart had been stolen, and my daughter-in-law had been deceiving me from the moment she entered this house. In this vast Marquis estate, I could not find a single family member worthy of my trust. If that was how things stood, then none of them deserved happiness. During the morning meal, only Margaret and I dined together, as Marquis Sebastian was occupied with official duties. Today, we were joined by that elderly woman. Through careful questioning, I learned her name was Eleanor Whitmore, originally from Blue Water Province. Though I maintained a calm exterior, my hands beneath my sleeves had clenched into fists. Eleanor Whitmore, so it was her. I could never forget the humiliation she had brought me. Yes, I had heard this name long ago, on my wedding night with my supposedly deceased husband. I remembered it so clearly because that night he was intoxicated, murmuring this name repeatedly. I would not tolerate such behavior, slapping him awake and forcing him to promise he would never speak that name again. Later, I investigated and learned that Eleanor Whitmore was his childhood companion, a cousin with whom he had grown up. However, this cousin had married a local wealthy merchant before my husband's wedding to me. Who would have thought that though he never mentioned her name in my presence afterward, he had actually hidden this woman in the capital, right under my very nose. After breakfast, I dabbed my lips with my napkin and said pleasantly, "My dear sister, where exactly on Cobblestone Lane are you residing? I have a pair of exquisite pigeon's blood ruby ornaments that I would like to send to your residence." Ignoring Margaret's subtle look of disapproval, Eleanor quickly provided the address. I instructed my personal maid to deliver the gift personally, to demonstrate my regard for Margaret's aunt. Having arranged this, I inquired about our meal. "Today's medicinal chicken soup is quite excellent and nourishing. What herbs were used?" A clever servant girl stepped forward. "I cannot recall all the ingredients, but it contained a slice of 1,000-year-old ginseng." I nodded approvingly. Such beneficial soup should be saved for my son as well. I then turned my attention to my daughter-in-law and her elderly aunt, gesturing graciously. "Margaret has been somewhat delicate lately. Perhaps she should have a bowl too. Would you care to try some as well, my dear sister?" Both women accepted. Margaret took a small sip before frowning slightly. I smiled benevolently. "If you find it difficult to drink, please don't force yourself. Just remember to encourage the Marquis to have several bowls. It's quite nourishing." Eleanor drank eagerly, praising it effusively. The Dowager Marchioness truly cares for the Marquis. I agreed warmly. Naturally so. Sebastian is my only son by blood. If I don't treat him well, whom should I favor? Eleanor and I exchanged smiles, and I did not miss the mockery in her eyes. After breakfast, I retired to my quarters. The maid who had delivered the gift returned with a complex expression. I dismissed the others, and the old woman immediately knelt before me. Reporting to the Dowager Marchioness in that cobblestone lane residence, I indeed glimpsed a distinguished elderly gentleman who bears a striking resemblance to our Marquise. My supposedly deceased husband had been 20 when he died. After 40 years, few household members would recognize him, but he was Sebastian's biological father. Even the slightest resemblance was enough to seal his fate. Instead of anger, I laughed. Indeed, that explains everything perfectly. 2 months passed as my agents returned one by one. I spread their secret reports before me, reading each letter repeatedly until I came to one particular message that made my hands tremble uncontrollably. Something wet splattered onto the paper, creating a small dark stain before I realized with shock that I was weeping. 40 years had passed since I had last known tears, yet this single letter had awakened the deepest anguish in my heart. When my husband died, I struggled through exhaustion to sustain the vast general's estate. When my parents passed, I upheld the family legacy to secure a noble title for our family's only heir. The late emperor, remembering my father's service to the realm, granted my son a Marquis title despite ministerial opposition. Though future generations would inherit a lesser rank, it still provided protection for our descendants. For this family, I had poured out my heart and soul, still managing household affairs well into my 50s. Yet I never imagined that all my sacrifices had been nothing but a cruel joke. Sebastian was not my biological child. My real son had died 40 years ago in that vicious conspiracy filled with malicious calculation. At this realization, unable to contain my rage and hatred, I coughed up a mouthful of bright blood. The letter was thoroughly soaked with warm blood, becoming nothing but a sodden mess. I swallowed the metallic taste and, with shaking hands, calmly burned all the correspondence. Whether these so-called proofs were genuine or false, I would judge for myself. I had gathered them merely to clear the fog of deception. I would neither confront Sebastian with this evidence to denounce their family, nor turn these proofs over to authorities for a judgment that might merely bring disgrace to the Sebastian family name. What I wanted was the absolute destruction of the Sebastian family, complete annihilation of their lineage and fortune. Whatever I had given could be reclaimed piece by piece. After carefully disposing of all traces in the study, I shuffled toward the door. Before my maid could assist me, I collapsed at the threshold, losing consciousness. When I awakened, Sebastian stood beside my bed with genuine concern, saying worriedly, "Mother has finally awakened. Are you experiencing any discomfort?" I smiled weakly. "Sebastian, you've come. I feel no particular discomfort now." I extended my hand from beneath the covers, and he quickly stepped forward to help me sit up. I patted his hand, my eyes showing memory and longing. Perhaps it was merely my old headache recurring. I remember when you were 14 or 15 and fell gravely ill. I was so worried and anxious that I cared for you sleeplessly for 3 days and developed this troublesome condition. Sebastian's eyes showed guilt and emotion. "Mother has always loved me most dearly." I released his hand and turned away. Naturally, I treasure my dear grandson Edmund most of all. Where is he? Why hasn't he come to see this old grandmother? Sebastian fell silent for a moment before replying. "He did come while you were unconscious, but I sent him to his studies when you didn't wake." I gazed deeply at Sebastian. Edmund is like you, a diligent and studious good child. But Sebastian, after raising you for 40 years, how could I not recognize when you're lying? That grandson who calls me ugly and cruel now has a new grandmother. Why would he willingly visit me? Though I already knew they were not my family but my enemies, the years of genuine care I had invested were entirely real. My current sadness was not for the betrayal of loved ones, but for my own heart that had been so wrongly invested all those years ago. Age brings increasing frailty, I asked Sebastian. What caused today's sudden collapse? Sebastian replied with concern. Mother was merely overthinking, combined with your chronic condition. The physician said there is no serious danger. I grasped Sebastian's hand. You summoned a physician for me? Sebastian's face was full of care. Naturally, Dr. Morrison knows your constitution best. I wouldn't trust anyone else. I showed touched gratitude. How thoughtful of you. Dr. Morrison is indeed the most experienced physician in the Imperial Medical Academy. I certainly trust his judgment. After Sebastian spoke with me briefly, he left citing pressing official duties. Despite my body's discomfort from just awakening, I commanded sternly, "Bring him in." The so-called Dr. Morrison, whom Sebastian had mentioned, was dragged in disheveled, with a shoe stuffed in his mouth. A servant girl removed the shoe from his mouth and spat disdainfully as she threw it aside. Dr. Morrison held considerable status in the Imperial Medical Academy, respected even by palace nobles. He had never endured such humiliation. The elderly man's eyes reddened with indignation as he shouted, "Dowager Marchioness, why this treatment? I am the Deputy Director of the Imperial Medical Academy." I glanced at a servant girl, who immediately stepped forward and struck the Deputy Director hard across the face. Dr. Morrison was stunned, holding his head to one side in shock. I feigned a frown and chided, "Come now, such rudeness is inappropriate. Bring Dr. Morrison a chair." Dr. Morrison sat bewildered by my tactic of punishment followed by kindness, his face showing uncertainty and suspicion. I spoke gently. "My health has been poor, and I'm grateful for Dr. Morrison's treatment, but at my advanced age I'm terribly afraid of death and wish to ask, how exactly is my condition?" Dr. Morrison's brow showed anger. Such matters could have been discussed without this treatment. I smiled. "My servants behaved improperly. I shall punish them severely." I ordered a chest of gold brought forward and opened before Dr. Morrison. Only then did Dr. Morrison appear satisfied. Stroking his beard, he slowly replied, "The Dowager Marchioness suffers from chronic ailments, complicated by excessive worry. With proper rest and a few doses of medicine, you should recover." I smiled briefly, though my expression remained devoid of warmth. "By chronic ailments, you refer to my head condition?" Dr. Morrison glanced at me sideways and nodded with feigned profundity. I nodded along, then looked toward the chest of gold. "Dr. Morrison, your treatment efforts deserve reward. Will you accept this gold?" Dr. Morrison stroked his beard again, eyeing the gold with barely concealed greed while affecting indifference. "Since it is the Dowager Marchioness's gracious gift, I dare not refuse." I laughed aloud. "Ha! Dr. Morrison jests. I have another fine item here. Let me present both so you may choose." Hearing this, Dr. Morrison's eyes lit up even brighter. I beckoned for them to bring in a larger chest. The chest was dropped heavily beside Dr. Morrison, hitting the ground with a dull thud. I smiled. "Dr. Morrison, why not open it yourself? I guarantee the contents will surprise you." Dr. Morrison stroked his beard and approached with measured dignity, lifting the lid. With just one glance, he cried out and staggered backward, then rushed forward, trembling to fully open the chest. Inside lay a child, bound like a package, with his mouth tightly gagged. I raised an eyebrow. "See how delighted Dr. Morrison is. I hope you're not disappointed." Dr. Morrison frantically removed the cloth from the child's mouth and untied the ropes, wailing, "This is monstrous!" Grandfather and grandson embraced, weeping together, truly a moving scene. I dabbed my eyes with my handkerchief, saying emotionally, "Dr. Morrison and your lively, clever grandson share such deep affection." Then my tone shifted. "Since that's the case, I know Dr. Morrison's choice." I ordered the two separated, and the child rebounded. Dr. Morrison wailed and kowtowed, "Dowager Marchioness, why resort to such extremes?" I put away my handkerchief and smiled. "Of course, such extremes aren't necessary. So let me ask Dr. Morrison once more, how exactly is my current physical condition?" Dr. Morrison lay prostrate, motionless, for a long while. I waited patiently until I accidentally knocked over a bowl of medicine brought by a servant. The medicine bowl crashed to the floor, porcelain shards mixing with the bitter medicinal liquid, some fragments landing near Dr. Morrison. Only then did he slowly raise his head, tears streaming down his face. Everything was the Marquise's idea." An hour later, I sent Dr. Morrison and his grandson away in a sedan chair, along with that chest of gold. I carefully absorbed and digested those sordid truths. Not until dusk did I fully comprehend their meaning. So the child I had devoted countless efforts to raising had actually wanted me dead all along. I had thought myself the person who understood him best, but now I realized that truly evil people remain unfathomable. I had been aware something was wrong with my body 20 years ago. At that time, my elderly father had passed away, my mother was bedridden, and Sebastian was beginning his official career. I felt as though I needed to split myself into 8 pieces, attributing my physical weakness to overexertion. Moreover, Sebastian had thoughtfully found a renowned physician to treat me. After taking several doses of medicine, my health indeed improved significantly. That so-called renowned physician was none other than the current Dr. Morrison of the Imperial Medical Academy. I had to admire Sebastian. He had been plotting my death for 20 years. However, the poison's dosage was extremely weak, and I was always particularly careful about my food. Furthermore, he wouldn't want me to die too quickly, since he still needed my efforts to secure his advancement. Only today did I understand that his plan had always been to climb to power by stepping on my maternal family's legacy. All these years, Sebastian had never ceased administering poison, whether in food I consumed, incense pouches for insects, or even the ink fragrance on books. The only thing that sustained me this long was the palace intrigue skills I had learned from my wet nurse before marriage. Therefore, I avoided incense, was extremely careful about food, and enjoyed reading medical texts in my leisure time. This made it much more difficult for Sebastian to act, and through these back-and-forth attempts, I had actually survived 20-plus years. More importantly, as my body gradually declined, I discovered the hair-raising truth. Dr. Morrison's medical skills aside, his rise to high position in the Imperial Medical Academy owed much to my son's influence, naturally using the resources I had worked to obtain for Sebastian. Investigating him proved remarkably simple. His son was worthless, frequenting gambling houses and brothels, with Sebastian covering all his gambling debts over the years. His grandson, though only a child, showed remarkable medical talent that Dr. Morrison treasured above all else. I understood perfectly how to manipulate Dr. Morrison. Since he knew I had the power to kidnap his grandson and had stationed guards at his home, he dared not make any moves in the short term. Most importantly, my days were numbered. Having endured for so many years, I had long since had my fill of life. Before dying, dragging a few people down with me suited my nature perfectly. Since I was not yet dead, clearly others were meant to die first. I pressed a hidden mechanism beneath my bed, retrieving a small porcelain bottle from within. This was something my mother had left me, her final means of protection before her death. During these days of recovery, my dutiful grandson Edmund finally came to see me. I stroked his head, smiling. "Your father says you study diligently. How are your lessons progressing?" The child, barely 10 years old, showed a flash of disgust before asking obediently, "I complete all my assignments properly." I withdrew my hand, my tone no longer as warm. "Edmund, tell grandmother, do you enjoy learning those things?" Edmund looked at me with innocent eyes. "If grandmother wishes me to learn, then naturally I enjoy it." I shook my head with a sigh. Having experienced life and death, grandmother has come to understand that if Edmund dislikes something, he shouldn't be forced to do it. From now on, simply do what makes you happy. Edmund tilted his head. Grandmother's words confuse me. I smiled. Your father is a second-rank marquis. When you inherit his title, you'll naturally have your place at court. Watching you study so hard day and night pains my heart. Edmund's eyes showed surprise. Grandmother truly means this? I nodded. I was wrong before, constraining you too strictly. Now I understand. Our estate's legitimate heir need only be happy and carefree. I still felt some tenderness toward this grandson. Let him enjoy himself before death. Soon enough, he would have no more opportunities to play. I narrowed my eyes, showing a kind smile. Previously, I had been too strict with Edmund, and Sebastian would advise me to be gentler. Now that Edmund was no longer under my supervision, his pleasure-seeking nature emerged fully. Despite Sebastian's repeated scoldings, nothing changed. Margaret had never taken responsibility for the child's education, so when father and son clashed, she only wept. Eleanor had visited frequently during this period to offer comfort. Never having received proper education herself and being a grandmother who spoiled her grandson, she naturally protected Edmund. This forced Sebastian to seek my help. I sighed helplessly. Sebastian, you must consider your mother's condition. Bedridden as I am, I simply lack the energy to supervise Edmund. I also transferred most of my household management authority to Margaret. Without Margaret mediating between father and son, Sebastian and Edmund's relationship grew increasingly strained. Margaret frequently visited my quarters seeking guidance during this period. I shared everything I knew without reservation, earning her amazement. Mother is truly wise. Mother is the capital's foremost noble lady, incomparable to those common folk. I understood Margaret's type perfectly. She supported whoever served her interests. When Eleanor had spoken of family reunion after my death, Margaret had regarded Eleanor as the matriarch. But Eleanor lacked the ability to educate children and frequently clashed with Margaret's husband, disrupting their domestic harmony. Now that I had given Margaret real authority and allowed her to profit considerably, her ambitions naturally expanded. I waved dismissively with a smile. Margaret is intelligent and eager to learn, but I'm feeling quite weary today. Let's conclude here. Margaret replied with concern, Since mother is unwell, I shall not disturb you further. I hinted meaningfully, Don't let learning these small skills make you forget priorities. Sebastian is busy with official duties. Perhaps you could take him some chicken soup to see how he fares. Her face showed bashful color. Mother manages countless affairs, yet still attends to the smallest details. I advised, Let me teach you one final technique. When delivering the soup, say you prepared it personally. Margaret looked surprised. This, I smiled. Sincerity matters more than anything. I hear you and Sebastian have had some minor disagreements recently. Between husband and wife, such troubles are common. Humble yourself a little, and Sebastian will appreciate it. Margaret replied emotionally. Mother, thank you for your concern. I will serve the Marquis well. I nodded and waved. Go now, don't let the soup grow cold. After Margaret left, I rose from my bed and summoned my personal maid. This servant had been with me only 4 months, but proved quite loyal. I had encountered her that day when I returned home heartbroken in my carriage. The young girl had stuck grass in her clothes, begging passers-by to save her mother. I spent 5 taels of silver to purchase her services. I named her Iris, to listen for spring's voice and to welcome new life. This girl was clever and quick. In her, I seemed to see shadows of old friends. I called her forward and handed her a wooden box. Though the box was heavy, she held it steadily. I smiled encouragingly. A gift for you. Open it. The box contained banknotes, scattered silver, and naturally her indenture papers. Iris's eyes immediately reddened as she knelt, voice trembling. My lady, you. I smiled and helped her up, saying, From today forward, you may leave whenever you wish. She nodded and helped me to my feet. I sat before my dressing table, gazing intently at the bronze mirror. The mirror reflected the blurred image of an elderly woman with a face full of wrinkles, her silver white hair neatly arranged. I wore no hair ornaments whatsoever. Moreover, I had Iris apply some powder around my lips, making my complexion appear even more pale and wan. The great performance was about to begin. After so many days of bed rest, I could finally stretch and move about. A piercing scream shattered the evening quiet of the Marquis estate. A young maid burst into my courtyard, falling to her knees in tears. My lady! The Marquis is coughing blood. Please come quickly. What? I threw back my covers in shock, hastily donning an outer robe with Iris's help. Finally supported by 2 young maids, I made my way to the main hall. When I arrived, the household physicians were already attending to him. Sebastian lay on the bed, eyes tightly closed, occasionally coughing up bright blood. 2 physicians tried both pulse diagnosis and acupuncture, but nothing could stop his bleeding. Seeing my arrival, they seemed to find their anchor, reporting, Dowager Marchioness, the Marquise's sudden illness requires an imperial physician from the palace. I sat trembling beside Sebastian's bed as a muddy tear fell. I've already sent for Dr. Morrison. Please do everything possible to preserve my son's life. I hinted meaningfully. Even the 1,000-year ginseng bestowed by His Majesty, the estate still has half a root remaining. One physician's eyes brightened. Ginseng can sustain life. Perhaps it could help the Marquis. I gestured for Iris to fetch the 1,000-year ginseng. After much activity, Sebastian finally took the ginseng slices and stopped coughing blood. He slightly raised his eyes, speaking with difficulty. Mother. I wept sorrowfully, crying in anguish. My son, who has done this to you. Sebastian's face showed confusion before he coughed up more blood, saying, At dusk, I drank the chicken soup Margaret brought. Margaret, who had been weeping nearby, raised her head in shock. My lord, I never. How could there be anything wrong with that soup? I waved dismissively, giving Margaret a meaningful look before telling the physicians, Examine the soup. Margaret was so startled her tears stopped. Mother, that soup was exactly what you told me to bring the Marquis. I covered my eyes to hide my tears, lamenting, Such wickedness. Iris angrily retorted, How can the lady speak such words? Are you suggesting our mistress would harm the Marquise? Margaret looked confused for a moment, then denied vehemently, That certainly isn't so. She then consoled herself. Perhaps there's another explanation. The physician approached with a silver needle that had turned black, voice shaking. Dowager. Dowager Marchioness, the Marquis has been poisoned through the chicken soup. I let out a sharp cry and slapped Margaret hard across the face. Poisonous woman! How dare you poison my son? Sebastian seemed incredulous, looking between me and Margaret, who had rushed to his bedside. I had used my full strength. Her cheek quickly showed a vivid red mark. Compared to Margaret, Sebastian was far less likely to suspect me. He closed his eyes with a desolate voice. Mother, please investigate thoroughly. Do not wrongly accuse the innocent. I tucked Sebastian's covers around him, my voice mournful. Nor will I spare those seeking death. Dr. Morrison arrived late, glancing at me fearfully before continuing Sebastian's treatment. I watched with tearful eyes, speaking each word distinctly. Dr. Morrison, heal my son well. You must save his life. Then I led a group of servants out of the main courtyard in a rush. Margaret knelt at my feet, emotionally devastated. Mother, it truly wasn't me. That soup came from Mother's own quarters. I helped her up, my voice pitying. I naturally won't wrongly accuse good people, but neither will I spare those who commit violence. I told Iris, search the estate. Bring me anything unusual you find. I sat in the center of the courtyard with Margaret beside me. Someone must have sent word to Eleanor, for I watched her burst into the Marquis estate. Servants tried to stop her, but I stepped forward. Eleanor looked between me and Margaret with her reddened cheek, asking urgently, How is the Marquise? Beside her stood a stooped old man, head bowed so his face couldn't be seen. I dabbed my eyes with a handkerchief, saying with emotion, How kind of you to worry, coming so late to see my son. Dr. Morrison is treating him inside, but the situation remains uncertain. Eleanor grew more agitated at these words, nearly weeping. I must see him. I looked strangely at Margaret. Margaret met my gaze and said tremulously, Aunt is merely concerned. I replied, The Marquis is receiving treatment with life and death uncertain. All unnecessary people have withdrawn to avoid disturbing Dr. Morrison's life-saving efforts. Would my dear sister wish to interfere with medical treatment? How improper. Something in my words affected Eleanor deeply. She quieted down, though tears continued falling like broken pearls. She gripped the old man's hand tightly, trembling continuously. Still, I didn't drive them away. Not until midnight did Dr. Morrison emerge with a panicked expression. He immediately knelt before me, voice shaking. The Marquise was deeply poisoned and is now beyond help. Before I could react, Eleanor wailed, No! And rushed inside. I grasped Margaret's hand, lowering my voice. Margaret, your aunt seems excessively concerned about the Marquis. Margaret kept crying, not hearing my words, pleading, Mother, please let me see the Marquis. I found this tedious and released Margaret's hand. Were these people too lazy even to pretend? Go ahead. Sebastian lay on the bed, body curved like a bow, his face contorted in agony. I approached closer and gasped in shock. This is convulsion powder? Eleanor, who had been weeping, stopped and stared at me blankly. What do you mean? Convulsion powder? I cried in anguish. Convulsion powder is a secret palace poison. My son, who on earth wanted to harm you. Eleanor looked bewildered toward the old man who had entered with her. The old man nodded silently. I caught this exchange from the corner of my eye and nearly laughed. What a wonderful family, witnessing their own child's death yet maintaining such composure. Not until a maid entered and handed me a packet of medicine did Margaret see the wrapping cloth and cry out in shock, This I slowly unwrapped the package before her eyes, revealing several light brown, round medicinal tablets. Sebastian's face was completely contorted as unintelligible sounds rolled from his throat. Eleanor's heart was breaking. She pushed past me to grasp Sebastian's hand. My child, my precious child. My handkerchief was knocked away, the scattered medicine spilling across the floor. The old man, standing beside the bed, saw the medicine and spoke hoarsely. Where was this found? Iris declared loudly. These were found in the ladies' quarters, and the handkerchief is one she commonly uses. The old man raised his head, his hawk-like eyes fixing on Margaret. Margaret protested desperately. This is my personal medicine. What does it have to do with my husband's poisoning? I glanced at the old man, my voice trembling. Do you know what this is? This is nux vomica. The old man spoke deliberately, his aged voice seeming to emerge from his lungs. Nux vomica is used to make convulsion powder, deadly poison. Sebastian forced out several words through his torn throat, blood-tinged. Poisonous woman! Wretch! Having said this, he fell silent forever. I lamented and pushed Eleanor aside, throwing myself across Sebastian's body in grief, weeping while checking his breathing and heartbeat. Only after confirming his body temperature was cooling did I feel relieved. Dead, and good that he was dead. Meanwhile, Eleanor had somehow begun fighting with Margaret. More specifically, Eleanor was one-sidedly attacking Margaret. Having lost her husband and been wrongly accused of murder, Margaret was confused and heartbroken. After being struck several times, she finally thought to defend herself. It wasn't me. I didn't kill the Marquis. It was Mother. I continued weeping, paying no attention. Eleanor looked at me crying sorrowfully, then slapped Margaret. Wretch! It must have been you! My son treated you well. If he wanted to take a courtesan, what of it? Why kill him for that? I stopped crying and staggered forward, grasping Eleanor's wrist and pushing her hard. What are you saying? Sebastian is my child. When is it your turn to claim kinship, you mad woman? With Sebastian's body still warm, his room had never been livelier. Margaret continued arguing with Eleanor until she shouted, Aunt gave me that medicine! The old man, who had been helping Eleanor against Margaret, suddenly stopped moving. My eyes showed a flash of amusement before I pretended to help Margaret, using her hand to push Eleanor forcefully. Carried by Margaret's motion, I fell to the ground, feigning unconsciousness. Urgent footsteps approached, followed by Iris shouting, Come quickly! The Dowager Marchioness has been pushed down! I didn't remain unconscious long before awakening. When Iris saw me conscious, she immediately approached and whispered, My lady, that old hag is dead. The lady pushed her down and she struck something. My expression showed pity. Eleanor had appeared much more robust than me, yet when we both fell, she was the one who died. Naturally, it wasn't some divine retribution. She had consumed quite a bit of that chicken soup herself. In one day, the Marquis estate had 2 deaths, bringing official investigators to examine the situation. But I hadn't expected the old man to claim Eleanor died from a chronic condition, unrelated to Margaret. As for the Marquis's death, he said Eleanor had harbored malicious intent, using her niece to kill the Marquise. Who knew what the mother and son thought of this explanation when they met below ground? This matter concluded there, but the Marquis' estate was draped in mourning cloth. People suspected the elderly Dowager Marchioness had passed away, never imagining it was the Marquis in his prime. I used the excuse of multiple fainting spells from excessive grief to avoid Sebastian's funeral, leaving Margaret to struggle through arrangements for her husband's funeral rites. Her inexperience in household management led to numerous embarrassments, and the Marquis' estate's reputation in the capital fell dramatically, no longer resembling its former glory. Edmund lost two close relatives in one night. His world collapsed. With Margaret too busy to comfort him, he came crying to me. I held him briefly, sighing repeatedly. Alas, such wickedness! How could your mother be so intolerant? After several sighs, I coughed up blood. At my repeated urging, Iris hadn't left. In front of Edmund, she settled me comfortably, then took Edmund aside, comforting him. The mistress is ill from excessive grief. Young master, please don't disturb her rest. If young master wants to know anything, I will answer truthfully. I wasn't sure what Iris told Edmund, but from that day forward, Edmund stayed by my side constantly. When questioned, I learned Iris had even told him I was dying soon. I patted Edmund's head, gently comforting, "Edmund, don't be sad. He wouldn't witness my death. Before that, he would join his father." His own faults were minimal, but he shouldn't exist as Sebastian's child. Their family's tainted bloodline would not remain in this world, because I knew my child had been strangled to death when they replaced him. They hadn't even left my son the slightest chance at life. What right did I have to show them even the smallest mercy? My revenge would not be so foolish as to leave roots uncut. Knowing she could neither harm me nor discover the truth, and with her son estranged from her, Margaret seemed either disheartened or listless, spending entire days in the small Buddhist hall, avoiding all visitors. After half a month of this, my condition deteriorated daily. Iris stayed by my side with red-rimmed eyes, as if she had been crying secretly. I teased her, "I'm neither your father nor your mother. When I die, you'll simply lose employment. Why cry so sorrowfully?" Iris wiped her eyes, saying sadly, "Besides my mother, my lady has treated me better than anyone. I presume to consider you my dear grandmother." My vision blurred somewhat as I smiled. "Iris, tell me your story. Living has become utterly tedious. I want to hear tales." Iris dried her tears and recounted her life story completely. After finishing her tale, she continued with household matters. When she mentioned an old man frequently lingering outside the estate, I sat up. Iris showed no sadness now, looking puzzled. "That old man has repeatedly requested entry to see someone, but when the gatekeepers ask whom he seeks, he won't answer. I had the gatekeepers refuse him entry, but he comes daily. The servants regard him as mad." I told Iris, "Prepare a bowl of Edmund's favorite milk pudding, pack your belongings, let that old man enter, and then don't return to the estate. The small box contains an exit pass. Keep it with you." Iris seemed stunned, her eyes reddening again. I snapped angrily, "No time for coddling. Get out and serve your mother." Iris immediately knelt and kowtowed once. "My lady, Iris doesn't know what you've endured, but those people surely deserve death. If there's another life, may you live according to your own wishes, content for life." My eyes reddened as I feigned harshness. "Leave quickly. Don't delay my time." A bowl of milk pudding sat on the table. Though my legs were increasingly unsteady, I moved to the table myself, adding 2 drops of colorless, odorless liquid to the pudding with trembling hands. Edmund entered my courtyard as usual, delightedly seeing the single bowl of milk pudding. "Grandmother, is this for me?" I nodded with a smile, sadness in my eyes. "Just don't eat it yet. We're waiting for someone." Edmund was much more obedient than before. He nodded, then asked, "Where is Sister Iris? Are we waiting for her?" I shook my head again. "Iris went home and won't return tonight." Edmund nodded once more. A white-haired old man entered, his clouded gaze falling on Edmund. Edmund moved closer to me, muttering, "Who is this person? He looks filthy." I smiled. "The person we're waiting for has arrived. Edmund, you may eat your pudding now." Edmund smiled brightly. Thank you, grandmother. I love the pudding from grandmother's quarters most. It has a wonderful taste you can't buy elsewhere. The old man sat across from me, sighing as his aged voice spoke. Catherine, you recognized me. I smiled without warmth in my eyes and nodded, but I didn't respond to him, instead saying to Edmund, Edmund, don't you recognize him? You once called him grandfather. Edmund jerked up his head, his spoon hitting the bowl's edge and spilling pudding everywhere. Richard pushed aside his unkempt white hair, revealing a face 3 parts similar to Sebastian's. Edmund looked between my expression and the old man, hesitating. My grandfather died long ago. Don't falsely claim relationships. I smiled. Edmund, time's up. Say farewell to grandfather. Richard seemed to understand my words' deeper meaning, growing somewhat panicked. What do you mean, Catherine? Would you kill your own husband? Don't speak nonsense, I said calmly. My husband died 40 years ago, sacrificing himself for country. Ah! Edmund convulsed, his body racked with pain as he vomited blood. Only then did Richard realize my farewell concerned Edmund. He rushed to Edmund's side, condemning me. Even tigers don't devour their cubs. Edmund is your grandson. I sneered. He's your grandson. What does he have to do with me? Speaking each word distinctly, I said hatefully, You conspired to kill my child years ago and nearly caused my death in childbirth. From that moment, you should have expected extinction of your lineage. Richard covered Edmund's continuously bleeding mouth, his aged voice filled with grief. I beg you, save my grandson, save my Edmund. He is the Sebastian family's only bloodline. I stepped forward and slapped Richard. The most tainted bloodline in this world belongs to your Sebastian family. Why should it continue? I devoted so much effort to raising a son who began poisoning me 20 years ago. The grandson I carefully nurtured never truly considered me his grandmother, scheming and pretending affection from a young age, capable of abandoning even his birth mother. It wasn't my upbringing that failed. Your Sebastian family is rotten to the core. Edmund finally died in Richard's arms. The old man wailed and lunged at me, trying to kill me. I drew the pin from my hair and, enduring the pain of my body being nearly shattered by his assault, stabbed repeatedly at Richard. One stab brought endless screams, another stab. Since I had little time left anyway, I wanted Richard to die before me. Warm blood drenched my body as I finally smiled with release. My child, after 40 years, Mother has finally avenged you. On the road to the underworld, Mother comes to find you now. Epilogue. I opened my eyes again to find my wet nurse, decades younger, kneeling beside me, wailing, Madam, the general has sacrificed himself for country. He has passed. I swayed unsteadily, grasping the wet nurse's arm, crying out, What of my child? Where is my child? The wet nurse, thinking I couldn't accept the shock and had lost my mind, sobbed, The young master is with his wet nurse, madam. Please take care of yourself. I released her hand and ran toward the side courtyard, following memory. The wet nurse was coaxing the baby in swaddling clothes. Seeing my disheveled hair and crooked hairpins, she was startled. I approached trembling, reaching out to hold the child. Seeing the baby in the swaddling clothes cry loudly at my frightening appearance, all my blood ran cold. It was Sebastian, not my child. My hands immediately loosened, but the quick reflexed wet nurse caught Sebastian. I collapsed to my knees, weeping bitterly. Why? Why not earlier? If heaven pitied me, why not let me return to when I gave birth to my son? Even through difficult labor, blood loss, and 3 days of agony, I would have protected my child and destroyed those who killed him. But it was too late. Everything was too late. Even Reborn, my child, was already dead. But others only thought I couldn't accept the sudden news of my husband's death and had temporarily lost my mind. The household servants all comforted me. After crying enough, I feigned heartbreak, grasping the wet nurse's hand. "Where is the general now?" The wet nurse sighed. He should be entering the city soon. I forced composure and, like my previous life, ordered the steward to drape the entire estate in mourning cloth. When Richard's coffin was carried in, I wept until near fainting. The soldiers who brought him back included many of my father's former subordinates. Seeing my grief, they showed sympathy. Tears streaming, I bowed deeply to them. "Please, let me see my husband one final time." The soldiers exchanged glances, all shocked by my words. But thinking of my widowhood at such a young age with an infant child, they felt pity. A young officer helped me up, saying gently, "Madam, tonight we brothers will open the coffin for you, but General Sebastian has been dead 3 or 4 days, so—" I said tremulously, "I'm not afraid, I just want one last look at my husband." After dealing with mourners during the day, I returned exhausted to my chamber for brief rest. Sarah, my personal maid, came to my side then. She looked at me with unspoken sympathy, not knowing how to comfort me. Sarah was my dowry maid, but not ordinary. She was someone Mother had personally prepared for me. She had medical knowledge, a girl Mother had found on the streets, 10 years my senior. But I knew that, compared to medicine, Sarah was more skilled with poisons. Previously, I had been too naive, thinking that as daughter of a first-rank general protector of the realm, married to one of Father's junior officers, naturally I would be respected. Richard was promoted after our marriage, using the honor I brought him. Surely he wouldn't dare mistreat me. But I underestimated human evil. Richard had dared to harm both me and my child. I had been too arrogant before, falling victim to treacherous people. Now reborn, I wouldn't play games with them anymore. Since Richard wanted to die, I didn't mind helping him. I grasped Sarah's hand, asking, "Sarah, do you have any useful poisons with you?" Sarah's eyes lit up. "Miss, I brought many." Previously, when Sarah called me Miss, I would correct her to call me Madam. Now I no longer wish to observe such proprieties or be a Sebastian family wife. From Sarah's collection of bottles and jars, I selected what appeared to be a very small porcelain vial. Sarah said, "Miss, this poison is dangerous. After drinking it, the body decomposes faster than normal, but it's relatively weak. You'd need the entire bottle to kill someone." I beamed, showing my first genuine smile since rebirth. "Dear Sarah, thank you for helping me." That night, I kept vigil with my mother-in-law. She dozed fitfully, showing no particular grief. In my previous life, she surely knew the truth about Richard's feigned death from the beginning. Hard to imagine an elderly woman going to such lengths to conceal this. Like my previous life, I said considerately, with red-rimmed eyes, "Mother-in-law, at your advanced age, please rest. I'll watch over my husband tonight." My mother-in-law seemed eager to return to rest, holding my hand and saying perfunctory words like, "Good child, you've suffered," before leaving. I dismissed the servants, and those young officers came as promised. They worked together to pry open the coffin, and just as they were about to remove the lid, I stopped them. "Thank you all. I'll move the lid myself. My husband's body may be—" Sob. He surely wouldn't want his life and death comrades to see him in such a state. I sobbed while preparing to bow. The nearest soldier supported me, looking sorrowful. "Ah, madam, why say such things? Since that's your wish, we'll withdraw first." Another soldier said, "Madam, you must hurry. When dawn breaks, it will be too late." I nodded through tears. After they left, I struggled to push open the coffin. Richard's young face appeared before me. Except for pale complexion, there were no signs of decay, nothing like someone dead 3 or 4 days. In my previous life, I had been too foolish to suspect anything, but who could imagine such a disgusting scheme? Fortunately, after tonight, I would correct all errors and set things right. I fake wept while checking Richard's breathing, feeling very weak breaths. His body was still warm. His breathing was very faint, heartbeat much slower than normal. I felt around his body while crying, seeing if he might awaken. Confirming he was unconscious, I took out the porcelain bottle and mercilessly forced open his jaw, pouring the entire bottle down his throat. To ensure effectiveness, I pushed his jaw, making sure the poison reached his organs. Watching his face turn blue-green, hearing urgent voices outside, I finally closed the coffin. Watching those nails hammered in one by one, I finally relaxed. At Richard's burial, I wept again. Afterward, I closely monitored the rear courtyard. These days, the old lady rarely left the Buddhist hall. 3 days later, a sharp wail erupted from the Buddhist hall. I smiled slightly, then turned with urgent worry on my face. I pretended concern and burst into the hall, shouting, "Mother-in-law, what's wrong?" Ignoring the wet nurse's attempts to stop me, I rushed in. My mother-in-law was wailing and beating a young woman, crying, "Didn't you say there was no danger? Ah, how can he be gone?" I went to support my mother-in-law, asking, "Who's gone? Mother, please calm down." But she was lost in emotion and pushed me away. After pushing me, she regained composure, remembering Richard's feigned death was hidden from me. Wiping her tears, she said coldly, "Why did you come?" I pretended hurt and confusion. I was going to see little Edmund and heard mother-in-law crying as I passed the hall. I was worried and came to ask. She covered her eyes, forcing herself together. "Nothing's wrong. Go see Edmund. Don't enter the Buddhist hall casually in future. It disturbs the Buddha's peace." I suppressed a sneer. She dared speak of disturbing the Buddha's peace. Such a wicked woman who deceived her daughter-in-law would never receive Buddha's blessing. Since she knew about Richard's deception and secretly agreed and cooperated, she surely knew Sebastian wasn't my biological son. 2 days later, my mother-in-law's chief maid came to fetch me. I could guess the reason, but didn't expect her to demand I kneel upon entering. Kneel to her in dreams. I stood my ground, asking, "Have I done something to displease Mother?" My mother-in-law couldn't contain herself, walking up to slap me. "Confess! Did you kill my son?" I quickly caught her wrist and pushed her hard. "Mother, are you not fully awake? My husband died serving country. What does that have to do with me, a sheltered woman?" She dropped all pretense. "That night you had people open my son's coffin." I laughed coldly. "My husband campaigned for 3 months without return. Poor child still in swaddling lost his father. I wanted one last look. What's wrong with that?" Her face was ghostly as she tried to attack me again. "Confess! What did you see? Was my son alive and well then?" I grabbed her hands, showing none of my former respect. When I saw him, my husband was already beyond recognition. That scene terrified me sleepless for 3 days. "Mother, what are you saying? Are you grief-stricken and hallucinating?" I left immediately, calling loudly, "Summon the household physician to treat Mother." Before my words finished, someone emerged from behind my mother-in-law's screen, pointing at me shrilly. "It's her! It must be her who harmed Richard! He wouldn't die! He took the false death drug!" My mother-in-law glared viciously at the woman, but said nothing to stop her. I looked strange. What false death drug? How do you know that false death drug wasn't real death poison? In my previous life, that false death drug was indeed remarkable. But being reborn, even the best false death drug couldn't withstand human calculation. I looked at that woman and asked my mother-in-law, "Who is this woman?" Before she could answer, I sneered, "I, Catherine Grace, declared before marriage that I wouldn't share my husband with other women. Mother-in-law and my husband dared deceive the Grace family." Hearing me mention the Grace family, my mother-in-law realized that even as a Sebastian family daughter-in-law, I remained a Grace family daughter. My maternal family was powerful, far beyond their ability to bully. If previously Richard existed and I had a child as Ty, enduring some grievances was acceptable. Now Richard was dead, leaving only one child, and they truly had nothing to control me with. Moreover, that child, my mother-in-law explained awkwardly, this is my son's distant cousin. I left with one sentence: whether cousin or mistress, investigation will reveal all. I was tired, truly unwilling to waste my prime years again in this house. Leaving Sebastian Estate, I ordered servants to drive home to the General's manor. Reborn, and seeing my young parents again, all grievances from past and present life found outlet. I held Mother, crying inconsolably. After a night of deep conversation, Father went to the palace the next day to request imperial permission for divorce. Mother refused to let me return to that tainted place, ordering Sarah to bring back all my dowry items. As for Richard and that woman's illegitimate son, I would no longer care. I wanted to see what this child could become without my previous life's careful guidance and the Grace family resources. If he proved too capable, I'd simply have him eliminated. Sebastian was merely an ant I could crush at will. This life I would pursue my true destiny.